Hello, Jamie from Inky&Scrappy, sharing with you today a simply rustic sympathy card with some quick watercolor and, of course, creating in multiples. So for this one, I brought out a favorite from close to my heart. This one is a super old stamp set. Keep in mind that you can do this with other stamp sets that you have. I want to say Art Impressions has a lot of good watercolor style image ones to do, like birds and flowers and stuff. Something that's got a lot of line detail and might not be something that's easily colored with an alcohol marker. This works really well with Zig or I like Brutus Monroe's Aqua pigment, like they're Aqua pigments, which is a liquid watercolor. I love using Distress Reinkers for watercoloring as well as just a watercolor palette, something that's, very mobile. And so I did stamp 3 of them and then heat set them. So I stamped them with VersaFine Onyx black ink, and then I heat set them with some some fine clear embossing powder. It just makes coloring with watercolor a lot faster and easier because it kind of gives you a well or a place to, you can go from one color to the next without having to worry about them mixing so much. And so for this one, coloring the first one usually takes me the most time because I have to figure out where I'm going with my colors, what colors I'm doing for sure, and then of course, just in general where I'm going with this one. And so for this one, I've colored this one a few times, so I kind of knew where I was going with it, what I was doing with it. I brought in both a green, I think it was a yellow green, and then I brought in a blue green for my trees. I didn't like the brightness of those back ones. I wanted them a little bit darker. So I did bring in, for my black, I do use Distress Reinkers in Black Soot for it. It's the truest black watercolor that I have or that I find. My Brutus Monroe black watercolor aqua pigment is like, it turned like a dark blue. I can't even, it's a gorgeous color. It's not black though. So that's the one that I use. I was showing the water because, yeah, it really needs a lot of water added to your Distress Reinker. It will not dry if you do not add enough water to a Distress Reinker and use it as watercolor. I know this because I've done it. So that's kind of, why I was showing you that it's so concentrated that when you, rinse it in your water, it literally was like black, like the black streak was in there. So keep that in mind. I was planning on doing a red barn because it would pop color-wise, but I have this issue with making things like they are sometimes, and this person's barn was not red, and so I was struggling to add the red to it, and I ended up changing my mind in the long run and I ended up bringing in the new Distress Scorched timber color for my barn color. My Distress ink pad of this one is super juicy, as you can tell. My oxide one, on the other hand, I need to do some re-inker on it already. I'm not impressed with the juiciness of my Distress oxide in my new ink pad. But so I added that one in. Once I was happy with how that looked, I did do my other two, and yeah, I can switch the colors a little bit on the other ones, because that first one is always a do I love it or do I hate it, but it usually lends to where I can kind of adjust my coloring there if I so choose. Now I have this I don't know, this is probably, I want to say it's die cuts with a view. It was like, it's a pack, like a 6x6 pack of just this burlap paper. It really is just burlap with paper backing. So if you cannot find this, it's old, okay? I have no clue. I've had this forever, and I always forget to bring it out and use it. It does add quite a bit of bulk to your card, so keep that in mind if you use it. But I think it actually adds more bulk because I think I have some actual burlap that's thinner, that's just burlap, but this stuff cuts better and easier just because it's got that paper backing. Now I also like to fray it on the ends, so I pull some of those, you know, strings out, and then once I have it how I want it, I do pull that paper back off. You don't have to pull that paper back off. I like to pull the paper back off. It adds a little less bulk, and it also gives it a little bit more mobility and movement. So if that's, you know, if you have this, and I have no clue if it's still available. I know it's older. Now, I didn't cut down, so I cut my pieces of watercolor paper to work with my image, and I didn't necessarily make them to work with an A2 size card. I just cut my mat, and then I just cut my card to size. It was, you know, I cut what, maybe a ½ inch off of the whole thing, so it ended up being like a 4 1/4 by 5 inch card instead of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, which was fine. I did bring in Tailored Expressions, their Sympathy set. I will try to find the name of it and list it below, but it's basically my go-to now for my sympathy sentiments. I have a couple of different sympathy sets, but this one is definitely my favorite. So before I actually stamped it onto my watercolored panel here, I wanted to make sure I liked the placement. And so I struggled with where to put it. Maybe if I'd have made my piece of paper a little bit bigger, I'd have had a little bit more real estate to use. And I wasn't overly worried about it being, you know, totally readable, like the whole thing, like the with sympathy part. I really just wanted the sympathy part on there. And so by putting it down in the corner, I really did have to like wiggle it and make it work to get it to go. And yeah, I struggled to get it to stay where it was. I wanted to make sure that it was going to stamp, and it was going to stamp straight, and nothing stayed in my corner like it was supposed to, because, you know, I was in a hurry. That's kind of how it works when you're in a hurry. And so I did bring in a smaller piece of acetate in hopes that it would stay in the spot that I wanted it to stay in, and of course it lifted and moved and did all the things. But it was, you know, it stayed well enough that I could wiggle up, figure out where my placement needed to be. Now, because that was a red rubber stamp, it would not allow me to place it further down than I needed to place it. You know, it needed a little bit of room there, and so I ended up just moving my panel up a teeny tiny little bit before I ended up stamping. I did want to make sure that it was going to stamp properly and in the right spot. So I did use my VersaFine Onyx Black for this. I did not heat set or use embossing powder on it. I just did a flat black with Sympathy on the corner of each of these. So once I kind of figured out where that placement was going to be, and it was just easy to pop each one in there, wiggle it up from the bottom a little bit, and stamp it from there. So once I have those ones all rip-roaring and ready to go, I will end up adding some of that double-sided score tape again to the back. Now I do it on this, the score tape on the back for that, to get it to adhere to that burlap. It's, you know, I do both the glue and that score tape to make it stronger stick. Now I used 2 of them. I made the same. The third one I just used a scrap of that burlap instead of cutting another piece, and then I backed it with another piece of blue. So there is my finished cards for this one. Have an amazing rest of your day. Keep getting inky. Bye!